Hello，大家好，欢迎来到瑞视频。美国少数族裔媒体服务中心举办线上座谈会。现在请看美国新闻速递来自洛杉矶的报道。
We have two experts that will walk us through the issues that as workers we face when we're not paid our wages, when we have disputes, and so on. And you will see that there's very little mystery, little reason to fear, to make sure that our rights are respected. And certainly, we're going to be discussing today that we get paid for the hours we work. Don't fear that there will be immigration consequences. We want to be here to answer any questions, and we have the right speakers.
Just to give you a little bit of a background about the Anti-Retaliation Ordinance, on September 1st, 2020, and in response to the pandemic, the Board of Supervisors passed a motion to allow workers in industries that are most vulnerable for outbreaks to convene to ensure their employers are following the public health orders. And this group is called Public Health Councils. They will be trained by our Department of Public Health and certified worker organizations in order for them to ensure that there's safety in their workplace. So the purpose of this program, as I mentioned, is to allow for safe workplace and to allow safe reopening of businesses. However, we do realize that when such convenings happen, there sometimes may be retaliation. And in response to that, the county adopted the Anti-Retaliation Ordinance prohibiting employers retaliating against employees that report public health violations, such as discussing it with other employees, belonging to these public health councils, or informing workers of their rights, participating in investigations, so on and so forth. This ordinance was adopted on November 24th, 2020, and that's when it became effective. It became effective immediately. Any employee that works within the boundaries of County of Los Angeles. You'll see when I go into the other ordinances, this is a little bit different because generally the board acts in the unincorporated areas of the county. However, because of the pandemic, because of the emergency, they extended that scope to all areas, all boundaries of the County of Los Angeles, with the exception of two cities because they have their own public health officer, Long Beach and Pasadena. So any employee that experiences discrimination, experiences retaliation due to reporting of public health violations could come to us, and we will help them with their issue. Now, it's important to note that this is not just for violations of the COVID-19 public health orders. It also extends to any public health violations. The Department of Consumer and Business Affairs is authorized to investigate any violations of the public health anti-retaliation ordinance, including that we may issue a citation for a fine up to $10,000 per violation per day and per employee that's affected. Generally, our investigation is completed within 1 year of the receipt of the complaint. Now, the ordinance also carries with it a 3-year statute of limitation and a private right of action. So a worker could go ahead and hire an attorney and file a case against the employer, request for hiring, rehiring, or reinstatement to the position they sought or held before the alleged unlawful act. They can ask for actual damages, including lost pay, benefits, and statutory damages in the sum of $10,000 per violation, and also it allows for punitive damages. In fact, our county council is also authorized to bring an action requesting same remedies on behalf of the employee. So if an employee has suffered harm and they want to go back to work and they want to get their pay, the lost wages, our county council could also file. So any retaliation that's experienced in the workplace due to reporting of public health violations And workers are welcome to contact us, and we'll investigate, we'll contact the employer, and if need be, we'll have our county counsel file on their behalf. The next ordinance I will touch upon is the Hero Pay Ordinance. I'm certain that most of us are aware because it's been on the news frequently. The County of Los Angeles passed the Hero Pay Ordinance on February 26th, 2021, which is a few months ago, a couple of months ago, and it's effective for 120 days. It applies to grocery or retail stores that sell primarily food or household goods or a variety of prescription and non-prescription medication. Or if the store has over 85,000 square feet and dedicates 10% or more of its sales floor to groceries or retail drugs and meets all of the requirements. And I'm going to enumerate the requirements for the applicability. They operate at least one retail grocery store or drug retail store in the unincorporated areas of the county. They are either a publicly traded company or employ 300 or more workers nationwide and employ more than 10 employees per store. As any other ordinances, this ordinance does have exclusions, and it excludes public entities such as federal, state, county, and including school districts. This ordinance applies. It's different than the one I touched upon previously, the public health anti-retaliation. This ordinance applies to workers who perform work in the unincorporated areas of the county. The requirements of the Hero Pay Ordinance is that the employer provides an extra $5 an hour to the employee's base wage when the employee is physically present at one of the store locations, as I mentioned, who qualifies under the ordinance. And oftentimes we get questions as to whether if I telecommute, I work from home, does this apply to me? No, the employee has to be physically present at the store in order for this to apply. The employee can elect to receive paid leave in lieu of the $5 extra pay per hour, but they must request this in writing. And the accrual of this is 1 full hour of paid leave when the Hero Pay earned totals 1 hour of the employee's base wage. The ordinance also allows for credit for voluntary hazard pay, and I'll explain that. For example, if the employer voluntarily pays $2 extra an hour because the worker is essential and they are physically present as hazard pay, we will take that into account in order for them to comply with the requirements of the ordinance. Then they would have to pay an additional $3 to bring it up to the $5 requirement. In addition to that, there is a posting requirement in the ordinance where the employer must post a poster that has all the rights of the employees enumerated on it within the workplace, and it must be displayed in a conspicuous and accessible place where the employees can see it. That poster is available on our website for free of charge, and anybody can print it and have it. I think it's really good for employees as well to have, because it really spells out what their rights are. As far as enforcement, DCBA, specifically my team, has authority to investigate complaints of alleged violations of Hero Pay Ordinance, issue a wage enforcement order. A wage enforcement order is a citation. We can assess fines payable to both county and or the employee. And when applicable, we can ask for reinstatement to the position, for the employee to the position that they were discharged from, if they are discharged in retaliation. An employee claiming violations may also sue in Superior Court of California within 3 years of occurrence of the violation, and may be rewarded reinstatement, back pay, all penalties and or fines, treble lost wages and penalties, reinstatement if retaliated, interest on all due and unpaid wages, and reasonable attorney's fees. And now I'll move on to the last ordinance that we enforce, which is the Los Angeles County Minimum Wage Ordinance. Los Angeles County Minimum Wage Ordinance became effective on July 1st of 2016 for large employers, which we define as employers who have workers working in the unincorporated area, 26 or more workers working in the unincorporated areas. And in the subsequent years for smaller employers, which we define as employers who have 25 or fewer workers working in the unincorporated areas of the county. Currently, the minimum wage for larger employers is $15 per hour, whereas for smaller employers, it's $14.25, but there is an increase that will take place on July 1st, 2021, which it will increase to $15, aligning with that of the requirement of the larger employers. I do want to mention that the minimum wage increases were not delayed due to the pandemic, and they will continue. Beginning July 1st, 2022, the minimum wage will be adjusted based on the Consumer Price Index, which will be published on January 1st of 2022 and will become effective in July. Much like the Hero Pay, this ordinance also applies only in the unincorporated counties of unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County, and it carries a posting requirement as well, which enumerates the rates, the rights of the employees, and where to complain if a violation occurs. Such poster must be in a conspicuous place in a workplace. And if there is no physical workplace, then the employer must provide a copy to the employee. Just as I mentioned, this poster is available on our website for free of charge, and anybody can go in there and print it. We do have authority under this ordinance to investigate and issue administrative citation for violations of unpaid wages, issue citation for retaliation, failure to post, failure to allow access to payroll records, and failure to cooperate with investigation or maintain records. And excuse me, and that concludes my presentation.
That is a lot of excellent information. Certainly, like I mentioned earlier, knowing our rights and then knowing where to go for help, right? Can you give us like a story that you've seen how this affected workers regarding the public health anti-retaliatory situation? Have you seen complaints? How does that play out?
Sure.
What do people look for?
Sure, and I apologize in advance. I needed some water, but I do want to mention, and I want to echo what Rigo had said in the beginning, that immigration status is not relevant to our work. So long as we can prove that the person worked at the workplace, they earn the money that they're owed, and we will investigate the case and ask for a reimbursement or back pay. Before I go into the story, I do want to mention that we take anonymous complaints. We take complaints from third parties. If somebody's afraid to come forward and file a complaint against their employer, they can have a family member, or they can file anonymously, they can file online, they can email us, and I'll be happy to share our email addresses for each ordinance and in each program. And generally, they could come in person and file, but because of the pandemic, that's a bit difficult to accomplish. But over the phone as well, we'll take a complaint over the phone. Any means that they can reach us, we'll take the complaint because we understand the importance of this work. Now, we do have a case, and I apologize, I will not speak to the specifics because the investigation is still ongoing, but we have a case against a company where the employee continuously requested that the employer provide masks, comply with the health orders, because she's alleging that they're working without masks, there's no sanitation, there's no social distancing. And 2 days after complaining, she was terminated. Well, our investigators contacted the employer, requested records, and we have not found any evidence of the employee not performing or being late or any cause that the termination could be justified. So we're working with our county council to see if we can either go the administrative route of issuing $10,000 a day for the violation or perhaps filing in court. I do want to mention that our fines are pretty hefty, and they are that way because we want to deter these unlawful acts. We want to make sure we're there for our community, for our workers, and even if employers as well, even if they have questions, sometimes we see smaller employers where they don't know the requirements and they need help as much as the workers. So we're always available. Any questions, we have a counseling team that will answer any of the questions. If somebody is unclear as to whether they are within the unincorporated areas, we have links on our website that they could check themselves, or we'll be happy to check for them as well. We have our posters, we have frequently asked questions that really explain what these ordinances require. And we're happy to talk to anyone that contacts us, even if they don't want to release any personal information. That's okay. When we get complaints, we don't investigate just that complaint. We investigate the entire workplace to ensure that all violations are remedies, because we do understand that when one violation exists, others may also exist, and people may not want to come forward due to different reasons, whether they're afraid of retaliation, or their immigration status is at issue. All those factors are irrelevant for us. We will investigate the case regardless.
With Tzedek Legal Services, we are a nonprofit in the city of Los Angeles, and among our multiple services that we offer, one of them is offered by our employment rights team. So we are very, very lucky to be one of the few nonprofits that, because we don't receive federal funding, we could help undocumented workers. So because we are one of the few organizations that can serve that population, the majority of the people we serve are low-wage undocumented workers. We tend to see mostly workers in residential healthcare, where there's a lot of Filipino undocumented workers. We see a lot of garment workers, restaurant workers, car wash workers as well. So those are the populations that we mostly work with. And we also offer, so our services are free of charge for anyone that lives or works in the county of Los Angeles. And we do have a weekly clinic that is now virtual that we're very, very proud of. And we can share that information towards the end, but anyone can call our clinic number. And what's great about it is we have a group of about 5 attorneys that kind of crowdsource the issues. So the advice we give is based on, 5 attorneys putting their minds together and evaluating a case. And we give actual legal advice, not just information. So from there is where we typically take our cases from. So for the most part, we do a lot of wage and hour cases, a lot of minimum wage violations, and also for the most part, we tend to file with the California Department of Industrial Relations, often referred to as the Labor Commissioner's Office. Though we do file in the county if the worker works in an unincorporated area of Los Angeles, or with the city as well. They have their Office of Wage Standards. And we tend to file wherever we can file. So with the state, and if we could file with the county, we do that as well. And we see kind of which one moves faster. With the Labor Commissioner's Office, one of the benefits is that there's additional penalties that can be added on to minimum wage violations, and also to delay a payment. And you can also add rest and meal break violations, which for the most part, if there's a minimum wage violation, we're pretty sure there's going to be a rest or meal break violation. So in California, you're allowed to have a minimum of 30 minutes uninterrupted, unpaid maximum of 1 hour, and then typically in an 8-hour shift, 2 10-minute rest breaks. So usually, yeah, we see if there's one small issue, like not giving breaks or not paying minimum wage or not paying all the wages, we see a combination. So if there's one, there's probably another lurking around. And like I mentioned, for the most part, we do follow with the Labor Commissioner's Office. It's like a 2-page form that could be emailed. And we have a good relationship with the Labor Commissioner's Office, and they've done a lot to really make themselves more worker friendly in the past few years. And they also are very upfront and very aggressive about informing employers that a worker status is not relevant. They don't want to hear it. And if they do hear it, they will make sure that a retaliation claim is filed. And they also tend to prioritize immigration retaliation cases, which is also why we often file there if they're outside of LA City or LA County. And we have been seeing a lot of retaliation. I think somebody mentioned it in the chat, and it is. I think it's the hardest thing that we've been seeing, especially for undocumented workers, because once they're retaliated against or fired, they're not eligible for unemployment, right? Which is just kind of like a double punch, right? Like they don't have work, and then they don't have this safety net that is provided to pretty much every other worker. We've been seeing it a lot especially in residential healthcare facilities. And I'm trying to think where else. Kind of like, honestly, like we've seen more retaliation than I think we've seen before, but we also are not filing more retaliation cases. We'll see it, we identify it, we notify the individual of their rights. And unless they're already fired, a lot of workers are too scared to file. And the job market is so fragile right now that a lot of workers don't think it's worth it to lose their job if they do file a retaliation claim, because we also know that the reality is that oftentimes workers are fired for speaking up, right? And that's just kind of a reality that that workers understand, and that we also have to notify the workers about. So that's been really, really tough to know that people are really being put in a tough position, and employers kind of often tend to think that they have the upper hand because of the job market being so fragile. But we have filed a good amount of still retaliation cases, especially related to COVID. Workers wanting to take time off or taking more than 2 weeks off. We've seen a lot of COVID related questions and retaliation cases. And I think the biggest issue for us is there's been so many different retaliation COVID related laws that have been passed in the past few months. So there's like a federal one, a state one, a county one. Some expired. When one expired, the other expired, right? So like if we have one employer, they retaliated against someone, we believe they unfairly fired somebody in December, and then they kept retaliating against workers and they fired someone again in January. The person that was fired in January has a very strong case, whereas the person that was fired in December has a weak case because the laws that went into effect January 1st were stronger than the ones before. So I think that's caused some confusion for workers, but we're very happy to see that the city, the county, and the state have really responded and made sure that the changes that we know worked last year are now are still intact now. So under the California, I think it was a law passed in March that retroactively went back to January 1st. Workers again have their right to 80 hours of sick leave for COVID or to be vaccinated. But there was a gap January through March, I think 14th or something, where we didn't know what was going on. There was no law protecting workers. There is no law guaranteeing workers pay if they were if they got sick from COVID, if it was not work related. So I think now we're a little more stable now. We know what the laws are now. We know we can provide better guidance to workers now in relation to COVID, COVID-related leave, and now vaccine-related leave, luckily. So we've seen, that's been the majority of what we've seen right now. Well, that's been the majority of what we've seen right now with wage and hour. We've also had a dramatic increase in workers that have problems with unemployment, with EDD, right? I think we've all kind of heard a lot about the fraud issues and things like that, but I'm sure it's important to address fraud, but what we've really seen is that there's been millions of workers that have been affected by by EDD trying to overcorrect itself. A lot of workers that are not getting paid, a lot of workers that are not getting paid and not being told why. And although undocumented workers are not eligible for EDD, legal residents are, right? So we're helping a lot of legal residents, and sometimes there's issues with their identification because, typically, you think of the typical documents that the government wants to verify your information, and it's, your passport, your license, and, bills. And a lot of the times legal residents don't have all those documents. So that's been another thing that the EDD issue has been overtaking a lot of our work. And then second would be the retaliation. And then third, I think really what has been brought to the forefront is the really the egregious violations we've seen in residential healthcare, right? So it's people that are sacrificing themselves and their bodies to help others, to help our most vulnerable community, and people that also had COVID themselves. And a lot of them were getting paid like $120 a day to work 24-hour shifts, nonstop, no breaks. So it's obviously way less than what someone should be getting paid if they're living, waking up in the middle of the night to take care of a patient. And we've also seen the fear more in that community, I think in part because it's hard to get another job right now. So yeah, we've seen a lot of, I don't know how else to describe it other than really sad situations. And at the same time, we've seen our city and our county and our state respond and try to do something. And we really, really hope that this momentum of, really recognizing essential workers, which are often workers that were previously called, low skilled workers, how important they are to our economy and to our survival. And we really hope that that we can kind of keep riding this momentum and make sure that we continue to protect workers, especially low wage workers, especially undocumented workers.